Hi, everyone. Thank you for finding the time to join us today for today's fireside chat. My name is Karishma. I'm co-founder at Blobcity. We are a software platform that enables data scientists to run their AI and ML models and projects on the cloud. Today, we are in conversation with Prasanna Lohar, Chief Innovation Officer at DCB Bank. We are discussing on the future of banking. Would it be going to persist? Let's find out. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us throughout this webinar. You can hit on the chat icon on the right-hand side of your panel and write your questions there. We will be taking all the questions towards the end of the webinar. We have quite some time for taking the questions. So send us your questions and any comments that you would want to send us. Also, all of you joining here today are the privileged ones who get to see us live in action. We will be recording and we will premiere it on YouTube on this Thursday. In case there are any sound disturbances or internet outages or for any such reasons, our team might actually prompt us in between and ask us to do a part of the recording again, just so that we are clear on the recording that we're doing for YouTube. Also, a disclaimer that the thoughts and views presented throughout the session are going to be our speakers alone and not of their respective companies. Please do respect that. Also, last but not the least, if you are with us throughout the session, I have a special offer for you that I'll be announcing at the end of the session. So make sure that you stay till the end. Now, let's begin. Our today's speaker, Prasanna, is one of the prolific thought leaders in banking and fintech space. Prasanna today leads the digital transformation, innovation implementation, and open innovation practices at DCB Bank. He has launched the DCB Bank Innovation Carnival, a global innovation program for bringing about innovation through hackathons and accelerator programs. Throughout his career, he has been recognized with many leadership awards, including but not limited to being awarded the most influential payments professionals, top 100 innovative CIOs, digital leader of the year, top 20 BFSI leaders, and many more. It's my pleasure to welcome Prasanna today as a part of this fireside chat. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for taking the time and joining us today.
Yeah, hi, very good evening, everyone. Very good evening, Karishma and Sanket and Blobcity family. Looking forward for a very good discussion today. Hope this discussion will help many of our viewers to understand the latest trends around digital banking, what's really happening in the digital banking area within India, outside of India, how fintechs or many other change agents are helping this journey. Yeah. Yeah, hi Karishma. Yeah, I'm there.
I think I got muted in between.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me start with a very simple and quick question to start with the fireside chat. Prasanna, you are one of the most passionate industry leaders that I've met. You keep innovating and you execute on those ideas as well. Tell us about what is that one aim with which you jump out of bed every single day?
Yeah, so these days it's a really different experience nowadays. In the sense, since I think since mid of March, I think this situation has started typically in India, and most of the banks, most of the organizations started their journey on a new normal, like work from home. Now, work from it's so easy to work from home for first few days, but when it comes more than 30 days or more than 40 days, You have to really change your gears, really look at what is really, is that really future? So that's the one thing which I'm looking for. And to go back to your question, like what is that keeping me awake is ultimately customer. So this time a lot of demand is there from customer that everything should come on digital. So as a bank, we need to see what all those different initiatives we have to make live ahead, so that we reach out to our customer on time, before time, so that they can do banking wherever they are. That's the one aspect to look at it. Other aspect, like as we are living in digital era, and suddenly you must see it is a digital utilization is a multifold, at least as far as the digital channels are concerned. So looking at that aspiration, we need to really look at the performance of the systems as well as the security aspects. So I think these three areas keeping me awake. The first, which is like, how do I really change my digital transformation? So I think it's not a transformation. I think it's a like reformation. So whatever we have done in the past, let's look at which are those backend systems, which are those APIs, which are those transformational aspects we were running, and how can we really transform our journey or accelerate our journey. That is what keeping me awake, or I would say security aspect, performance aspects. So the thing is, like, being at home and work from home has no limits. What does that mean? That being at office, there is a limit. There is a limit that when you come out of the office, there is a different trend, or when you are the weekend working, there is a different trend. But being at home and work from it is always work from home. There is no limit. So it's a 24/7. Whether it's a holiday, or whether it is a government off, whether it is Saturday, Sunday. I think I have seen in my last 45, 50 days, me, my team, everybody is working. Like that, it's an like say example, last 3 days we were having some holidays like Saturday, Sunday, and Eid yesterday. But I think I have seen everybody was working at least for 8 hours. So that's a ultimate answer for you. We are awake. It's not like that we are sleeping at times at night. Also, we are keeping awake so that our systems are running 24/7. I'm not able to hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was on mute. All right. So thanks for giving us a gist of, that really helps. Also, now that we've gotten used to working from home, and we have our own space, and we know that, and like you rightly said, we probably work more than what we used to as well, or there's nothing else to do, so we are doing it. So what does your typical day today looks like these days?
So today I got up at a normal time. I think there are now extra responsibilities at home. It's not like that I am a digital banker, so every time work from home will be like working from laptop or this, that. I think there are other responsibilities are coming in my way, washing utensils, cooking. So these are new norms for me. I have learned so many dishes to cook. I must say in last 50 days, say it could be a pizza, or say it could be pasta, or some ready mix, or so I think that's a new thing which I learned in my life. I used to do that in early career, but this is something new for me nowadays. And coming back office, the work starts at 8:39. Typically, it goes till now. Maybe after this also we'll be having calls. So ultimately, earlier sitting in a bay, within a bay, I used to talk to my team. So within a 4-5 minutes, you can talk to 7-8 guys, and you can understand what they are working on. You can immediately connect, and there itself. But here, work from home, it takes a lot of time to do that. But over a period of last 30 days, now we have practiced how to really get along with these things. And I must say, the level of collaboration among teams, or among business teams or IT teams, or it has really gone like multifold. Like many people who are not talking each other, maybe not reviewing. So I think that collaboration is really increased a lot. We are utilizing collaboration tools, but I must say, when I'll go back to normal in the office, they just laugh against each other by saying, "Way we were working for last 50, 60 days." That's a new way which we are carrying. Typically my day starts 8:30 in the morning for office, goes till on 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening, and even after that I'm always browsing or learning something or the new things. Also, that's a different way of balancing your work-life balance. So I think I'm not sure how long it will sustain, but I think we'll have to figure it out how to really go ahead. So I must say work from home is really good for some roles. It's not good for all types of roles. For a longer period, when organization has some kind of a strategy, they have to really stick to their strategy, execute their strategy. At times, there we require some touch, human touch, connects, body language connects. It really helps. But I must say, organization will learn from here on. They may not operate full-flown work from home, but kind of on a hybrid kind of a model will really go on. So I must say I am enjoying this thing nowadays, but at the same time I'm missing my team, the kind of a culture, kind of environment we have. That is also another which I am missing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so undoubtedly, all business establishments have been affected. So talking about current times right now, irrespective of the size or the strength or the type of industry that you're in, things have been affected in terms of businesses, how they do transactions, and so on, right? So can you share some facts on the part where how has the impact been on specifically the banking and the fintech marketplace? If you can, tell us how the traditional banking has changed, how people are adopting to it, the consumer behavior has changed. So, if you could tell us a little bit about that in the current
I think it's a fairly everybody understand there is impact on life. There is impact on customer. The customer who used to visit your branches in month of February or January in India, now he is not willing to come to your branches even for fund transfer, or he will say I'll do it later on, right? So I think that's a learning for banks. How do we really serve that last mile customer? I am repeating last mile customer because customers like you and me, they were always on digital channels. But bringing on the banking experience for those guys who were in the branches, so it's very important for us. Or the account opening, I should start from account opening process, wherein our customer agents or a front staff used to go visit those customers who are potential customer, collect their KYC documents, bring back, giving it to those operational agents who are sitting in your operational units. They have to do data entry. Now nobody is operating full flow, like they are not operating for 8 hours. So now how do we open accounts, right? That's another challenge. And even if we open accounts, how do we serve those customers? That is the second area. And the third area, how do we engage these customers so that they keep on doing banking with us or any other operations with us? So that's the life for a banker. How do we really improve on before COVID, post COVID, or during COVID? So now if I say fintechs are the one of those pillars where helping banks. Now I must say the fintechs who will survive this COVID era, they will be market leaders in the fintech industry. So because the fintechs life is like they are sitting on that cash flow wherein they have hired so many people, they have those real estate where they work in co-working places. I don't know like how long they will sustain with the current pipeline. And that pipeline wherein now that customer is saying, let's work after 3 months or let's work after 4 months. So that is the some challenge which fintechs or some of those fintechs who are looking for some funding. Now those investors or VCs are saying, let's wait for some time. Once this situation will get over, so we will look at those funding options or investment options. So to be frank, so complete supply chain has collapsed. Even if it is a banking, if you say travel industry has collapsed, relevant supply chain, food market industry has collapsed, hotel industry has collapsed, and directly, indirectly, it has impacted almost all types of industries. So banking is there because it is a financial ecosystem, just like health ecosystem. We have to support the whole ecosystem. That is why we are there. But the challenge is that how do we give it to 24/7? So I must say, as a bank, we launched some apps like Zippy, where customer can come on that platform, use Aadhaar, PAN, use some of the relevant information, and open a fixed deposit account in no matter than 3 to 4 minutes. So just imagine the customer should take opening a fixed deposit like a journey of 2 to 3 days. or even on internet banking coming in, it was huge journey. Now that has reduced down to 3 minutes. Now, similarly, yeah, similarly, visiting a customer, that whole process takes around 7 to 8 days minimum for opening a account or KYCs. Now, bringing on video KYC kind of initiatives, that will now reduce a lot. Some of the banks have recently announced that they are ready with the video KYC, and that will become a norm after 3 months, 4 months. Every bank, rather, I must say, regulator will come and say it is a recommended solution. You should really go for it. Similarly, I think one of those important pillar, regulator will come back and say lot of changes, lot of new enhancement for banks to do. Say another example, if I want to go to ATM and withdraw cash, right? Am I gonna go there, put that my hand on a touchpad and put my entry, and while doing that transaction, I will not be that comfortable the way I was comfortable few months back. So can I not post my transaction on a mobile? So mobile will have just a screen just like ATM. I want to withdraw 500 rupees and I will see which is the nearest ATM. And I'll just go there and put my reference ID either to voice interface on ATM or some other way. Immediately your cash is out. It's like a touchless interface. So I think interfaces also will vanish as a part of a servicing. So that's the era which we are looking for. And another area, while I am doing a lot of innovations on a front end for customers on mobile or on these ATMs or entering in a branch in future, right? If I am entering in a branch in future, branch manager will come to know that Mr. X has entered. Let me go and just greet him by saying that what do you need X, because that's how we can bring on with the help of a computer vision. So that front office automation will go on, but banks will now here on looking at very, very important aspect, which is how do I optimize my cost, or how do I optimize my those n number of mandates in that operations and dispute management, contact center, data entry. So I think banks, or not only banks, every organization here on will look at how do I optimize its cost. Best way to do that, cut the jobs. Best way to do that, reduce the jobs. But that's not an ultimate way as far as the India is concerned, right? As far as the human strategy is concerned. But I think banks here on will look at those initiatives where they will see, we'll talk around that, which are those initiatives which banks are really looking at.
Correct. So as you rightly said, there are, you're bringing in automation throughout the entire process. You're optimizing a few things. I think it has given a level playing field to all businesses today to really take a step back, pause, and think about how we can add value to our customers, and also in a seamless way, right? So a quick follow-up question to this is, do you really think that we need so many banks, and or you just think that it's going digital banking in say the coming 5 years time, we're just going digital, and or can an AI bot be the next banker?
So I think that's what I think, coming back to your question. So this is what optimization, cost optimization is not only at a bank level, it will be at country level. It will be at complete world. Will look at where can I really save something, right? Say example, let's start with the world wherein remittances which takes n number of days, or trade finance which takes n number of days, can I reduce those operations? Or coming back to your question, can AI be tomorrow's bank? So I must say, why not? AI will be another interface, just like mobile banking, or just like internet banking, or just like a branch or ATM. It will be another additional channel wherein I'll carry my Alexa or some other device, and I'll interact with that device not only for my banking, but just in my banking operations also. What does it mean? It means that banks, like, I'll come back to your original question, does that so many banks are required or not? So it means that, are these banks are ready for that journey to bring on banking experience on that non-banking AI gadget, say Alexa or a Siri or something? If they are not ready there, so I will say sorry to those banks. Those millennial banks are bringing that experience for those upcoming generation of customers. Now coming back, when I say I want to create an AI kind of a banking, which is learning my data, which is learning my transaction and giving back those set of services on mobile or these gadgets, Alexa or Siri. So that is a future, and that will optimize lot of efforts around contact center. Just imagine you don't have to talk to the contact center, you will just talk to that bot, right? Even at a contact center, you will see instead of contact center agent, human being, you can keep some of those bots who are answering to the human being. Now, so apart from AI, is not only AI, it will be AI plus blockchain plus IoT. Why I'm saying this is if you look at a digital transformation of any bank, I will divide that into three parts. The first part is your mobile devices, your Alexa, Siri, in future your IoT devices. Tomorrow's consumers are your IoT devices. These devices will do the transactions on behalf of you. Your refrigerator, your smart car, your smart homes, your electrical appliances will do payment or any of the transactions on behalf of you. So that's the first part, right? Which is your front part. Now your backend part, which you will make it intelligent with the AI or big data, where you are talking about whether the AI only banks are required or not. AI will be always there, but it has to connect to your interfaces in a front face, which is could be mobile banking or any bot or any Alexa or any other IoT gadgets. And when you need trust in whole ecosystem, you will bring back blockchain kind of ecosystem along with AI. That is a must. You may not anticipate use of blockchain today, but the way we have seen the internet, you will not really like to order from Swiggy. You have to trust whether that food which is coming from that hotel, is it hygienic or not, where AI plus blockchain will come into the picture. Now, bringing back this backend and the front end, there has to be in between open banking layer or API layer. So that brings a complete automated banking picture. And I think every bank in India will look at this kind of a picture. So certainly, so many banks in India are not required. We require those banks who will service in India. We live in an era of more than six types of generations are here there in year 2020. So it could be millennials, it could be those SMEs, it could be those guys who are students, it could be those 45 plus, or it could be those 60 plus. So for all set of customers, we need different channels, and these banks has to be ready. Now, if you bring back your question, I must say so many banks are not required. More optimization is required. Say example, there are a lot of PSU banks are getting merged. Why? Because that's what we require. So many banks merged into Bank of Baroda, 5-6 banks which has merged to the SBI itself. So that is a learning for us. We have seen that. But at the same time, we have come up with an innovation like payments bank, wherein we see out of 9 only 3 to 4 are surviving. But that's a good experiment by RBI. At the same time, we have brought in small finance bank. Similarly, tomorrow you will see some kind of only banks which are digital only banks. I am sure in the next couple of years, RBI will come kind of some mandate. We need only digital only banks. It could be from existing bank, or it could be a new bank, or it could be some bank which is coming from some fintechs. So I think that's the era. So just in a nutshell, we don't need so many banks. We need a mechanism so that we serve ultimate customers. So UPI one example wherein we brought in consolidated efforts from all banks and given one offering through UPI, either through Paytm or Google Pay or Phone Pay to the end customers. I think more and more consolidations will happen. More and more account aggregations will happen. What does it mean? It means all banks will be aggregated at one location, and that will be utilized by multifold fintechs or any of those non-banking customers to bring an banking experience to the last mile. So that's the ultimate answer for you.
Quickly, your video is frozen. I can hear you very clearly, and everyone can hear you. I have just received a notification that you'll probably restart the video. Please. Yes, now I can see you. All right, perfect.
Yeah, I have restarted it.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, we are good to go. Perfect. So that's clearly, I think, what the world is looking for in terms of optimization, in terms of where the blockchain will actually come into picture and so on. And there is scope for banks to talk to each other itself and share
Yeah, it is
information.
both. It is, yeah,
Share information over, say, a blockchain network itself to form a consortium of sorts, right? And when we think forward, and when you are going
yeah,
forward, do
yeah.
you actually think that the actual banking could also move to blockchain, where all the transactions are being registered on a central
Yes,
network, banks are talking to each other on this network, and
yes.
even the KYC and everything gets just handled. We don't have to give KYC to every single bank anymore. That would
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really supporting these initiatives, and these initiatives are happening. People are practicing, and we really, that's another way to optimize. We have seen UPI is a one consolidation, right? Similarly, we will have to see how CKYC, current CKYC, will become next blockchain-based CKYC. I think NSE is doing some experiments around that, but certainly, like some of the experiment which I'm working with the income tax department, 15 years, 26 years, where income tax department fetches the input from multiple banks. So that will happen seamless for them. There will not be a lag of operations. So that these kind of initiatives which we are working on. There are n number of use cases will come up in banks for blockchain. Loan syndication, giving out the loans against a property. Same guy taking a loan from bank A and same guy taking loan from bank B against same asset will be stopped with the help of a blockchain, because all of these guys will come on the same network. So that's a way to look at multiple use cases in blockchain. So I'll give another perspective. The perspective is that in 80s or in 85s, right, we were very happy to talk about databases. And people used to say, oh wow, banks will go on databases. Is it possible or not possible? But eventually nowadays we don't talk about databases. What we talk about WhatsApp banking or mobile banking or internet banking. Ultimately, backend layer is a database. It could be AI database or it could be any other RDBMS. But looking at similarly, after 5 to 10 years, we'll not talk about blockchain. Blockchain will become integral part of every banking. See, we have seen so much of errors we have some processes like settlement, dispute management, which I was talking about. Blockchain tomorrow can remove all of these processes. And now, second perspective which I want to give is that you, me, or any of those customers who are on digital tomorrow need everything as a service. What does it mean? It means I need car as a service, I need food as a service, I need a home as a service. Like this, I have mentioned 3 services, right? So World Economic Forum says in coming few years, there will be more than 300 such services. What does it mean? It means that while availing those services, I need inherent trust out there. I need to know this is a good car. I need to know I'm going for this sharing economy based apparel, or I'm going for this rental home, or I'm going for this co-working spaces. So everything will be on a network, and when everything will on a network, customer will require more trust. They will not be happy with only Swiggy app wherein I'm ordering food. They would like to know what is the path of that food from farm to table. What does it mean? What was produced in the farm? Is that something I am receiving right now? There are a lot of learnings from COVID and this pandemic situation. Supply chain will be drastically improved on. People sitting in a hotel will get a mark. This is something standardized, which could be relevant to COVID, and they will go and eat only those hotels wherein complete supply chain will be based on blockchain or some other mechanism where traceability is maintained. What does it mean? It means that my banking doesn't remain with the only bank, or my experience as a customer doesn't remain only with the customer. I will look at one super app wherein there is banking as a service is one of those services apart from all those services. Insurance services or payment services or my food services or my car services, it has to come under one umbrella or under one network. When I bring on those kind of a networks, ultimately I will look at what could be the solution which will be in the back end and will govern the trust. So the answer for that is a blockchain. So banks will inherently have to be part of those networks ultimately. So I'll give an example, Estonia. Estonia, everything runs on blockchain. You just start imagining what all. They have a digital lawyers. They have a digital voting. They have everything. You can order on a apps, or wherever they are on. Their digital identity is mapped with their bank account. Is mapped with a, is mapped with a complete blockchain network. So that's the era India will look at after 10 years. Everything is coming. See, Setu is one of the example, right? Arogya Setu is one of the example. Everybody is there. Certainly, will bring on many more such initiatives. So coming back, blockchain will be must for every bank who wants to be ahead of the other banks, and whoever will really adapt, they will reduce down their cost and they will bring on much more secured systems for their customers. It is happening outside of India. Inside of India, experiments are happening. Many state governments are doing that work. Even banks have started their work apparently. But forming a consortium based upon use cases will drive actual journey for a blockchain adoption. So say it could be public, say it could be private. It all depends on what type of use case rather.
Right. So it is an era where we're looking at, who adapts to this change faster than the others,
Yes.
and who is able to give the customer the service that they need or they crave for or they're getting used to faster, better, with security, and take business forward. So I take away that as one of the key takeaways from here. Also, following on to the topic of going one step further to blockchain, the India government itself initially thought about cryptocurrency being loosely put illegal, or there should be restrictions on it. Just now in March 2020, they have lifted the restriction. So that makes me really think about whether crypto and COVID are really related to each other, or I mean, why the sudden change of heart or change of mind? So could you actually explain it to us, our audience, a bit about what the entire thing is about, and where has crypto been? The restrictions have been taken away.
Yeah, I think it's a good question for me, because I'm following blockchain cryptocurrency ultimately since last 3 to 4 years. Now, if you look at blockchain journey, I'll divide into 3 parts: blockchain 1.0, blockchain 2.0, and blockchain 3.0. So all the cryptocurrencies, which are more than 3,000 cryptocurrencies in the world, they will lie in a blockchain 1.0 bucket. The organizations like banks, telecoms, insurance companies, governments, healthcares, we really look at the use cases around blockchain 2.0, which could be based upon smart contracts, which could be based upon intelligent systems, based on smart contracts, wherein Ethereum or R3 or Hyperledger will take part of those implementations. Blockchain 3.0 is upcoming future, where you will find AI plus blockchain or IoT plus blockchain with the quantum computing. That era is yet to come. Now, bringing you back to your original question, cryptocurrencies and situation in India. So Supreme Government has said, Supreme Court has said that cryptocurrencies are legal tender, this and so and so. But ultimately, even if at a government end and even if at our end, the useful applications, ethical applications based upon cryptocurrencies or blockchain are most welcome. What does it mean? It means that the application based upon Bitcoin or Ethereum, what is it? What they're gonna do benefit to me? Tell me, right? If Bitcoin is illegal in India, what is that benefit it will make for a human being who is sitting in a village, or who is working or as a SME, or who is working in some of the farms? It will not really help. What is that gonna help? Is that tomorrow I bring back a ethical cryptocurrency, which has some asset behind it, which has some human purpose behind it, that will be really helpful. So that's the way to look at it. So I think government is still open for that kind of a study. Government is still has said it is okay, but they will keep on assessing what is that value added cryptocurrency will bring on. Say, I'll give an example. Can I not bring a wheat coin. What does it mean by that? A wheat coin which is operating in Era or which is operating in a community in Punjab, for example, wherein your wheat transactions are happening on a wheat coin, and farmer is getting ultimate income rather than some frauds are happening in current era, right? And they get less cost, and these are all frauds are happening in a farmer ecosystem or farmer marketplace. So I have seen some kind of these initiatives outside of India, wheat coin or a milk coin, or you talk about a solar coin or a energy coin. So wherein we can trade that thing, and which is ethical and which is a beneficial for ultimate human beings around you or for that society. If you bring back some kind of that cryptocurrency or that kind of a crypto application, I think government will welcome for that. Why we say ban to that cryptocurrency? Because it was never helpful. You put in some 100 rupees one day and you ask same bank, give me back 10 lakh rupees, right? That's not a fair for Indian economy. So that is why it was always no for such cryptocurrencies. Now bringing back COVID and cryptocurrencies, very good synergy, I must say. So similarly, we have seen so many video KYCs come up before COVID, which banks will adopt. Similarly, bringing back fungible assets or non-fungible assets. So like, can we just exchange the fungible assets, gold with gold, or some kind of another asset with another asset. So bringing back lot of such applications will come to reduce lot of overheads which are there in current ecosystem. I can say complete banking can be replaced with a crypto bank. It is possible technically, but whether regulator will allow, they will allow, provided they study thoroughly, they create some regulation around that, they create ecosystem around that, and they ask some of the banks to do pilot and they launch it. That's a gradual process. For UPI, it took 3 years to launch, right? It took 1.5 years to really get into that beam, followed by Google Pay and now Phone Pay and so many apps. Just imagine such a technology, which is a nascent technology, which is upcoming technology. How can it really come and do a overnight change? It will take some time, and that experimentation should happen with the corporates like big companies like Infosys, or corporates like NPCI, or non-profit organizations, IDRBT, or with the many other those startups, fintechs. They have to boost this ecosystem and bring on those innovations. Government will not come in overnight, say this is an app, let's start utilizing. It will be always a support from complete ecosystem, research institutes, academia, corporates, research companies, and innovators like us. So that's how it will happen. But here on next 5 to 6 years, when sharing economy will be on a high, that time certainly you will see lot of closed user group cryptocurrencies will be there. Say milk coin in Amul in Gujarat, or you talk about wheat coin in Punjab, or you talk about sugar coin in Maharashtra, or some rice coin in Kerala. That is all possible.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, that's a tons of things, a long way to go, tons of things to be accomplished. And I think right now is the time to think ahead of, something that we did not expect happened, and now it's time to think ahead of saying probably we should just do it quicker than we thought. So yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
So I must say, just to support Karishma, today we talk about AI, blockchain, and IoT, big data. Today we make a hype out of it. Mark my words, in 3 to 4 years, there is something else we should be talking about. We will be talking about on virtual reality. We'll be talking about augmented reality. We'll be talking about Facebook having another community only on virtual reality. We're talking about some other community where you have to go there, enter it there, and leave that world. So that's another era. We'll talk about that. So this will become normal. Blockchain, AI in next 3 to 4 years will become normal technologies.
Correct. So also, quickly, I had a few questions just randomly that occurred to me. So let me ask those as well. So now a lot of transactions have been moved from cash to card, right? People have gotten used to transacting with cards. We are going digital, and what that also means that we are using our cards every single day for whatever we want to buy online. It comes to my doorstep. I'm happy about it.
Yes.
So banks really make money out of the transaction cuts that you get, or the transaction charge that is applied to it. So does that actually mean that banks are benefiting from this and making more money than before? And probably you should not think about charging or even giving out loans for that matter. Is that like
so if I ask some of those fintech companies, or if I ask those startup companies, start offering your services free of cost, is it possible for them? It's not at all possible for them. They have to put their resources, they have to put their hardware, software,
not
development
offering for free, but looking at they're making more money. So is loans also a kind of
it's
fee,
all
or you
myth.
have to keep it?
See, it's all myth, or making some money. It's not like that. Moreover, just imagine for a transaction which is happening at a cost, how many efforts are going. I'll just say, if you are doing transaction on a point of sale, that card which you get, right, it has some cost. That plastic card has some cost. It starts, the journey of that plastic card starts from a white plastic created by some companies like Manipals or some of those companies. Then we have to emboss that card, personalize that card, and that is a complete machine setup, like which is given by some of those companies like card personalization unit. And those, after that embossing, I have to give that card back to the consumer either through courier system or that complete workflow system wherein I will create an account opening system, this and that, which is another overhead for banks. So this process, complete process, is called as a card issuance. I have created that card and I have given that card in the hand of a citizen, right? That's how is it. Now, where he will operate that card? He can operate that card on ATM. He can operate that card on POS. He can operate that card on a mobile POS. He can use that card virtually on e-commerce site, or in tomorrow it could be in toll tags, or it could be on electronic toll collections and so on, right? So now, to create that infrastructure, it doesn't come in overnight. It requires a lot of cost. It requires a lot of infrastructure. Even after creation, it requires a lot of cost and operations overhead to maintain that, right? Now imagine why we will per transaction, why we will not add on those fees. That is what required for every transaction, right? If I give a card, I am giving a card, or if I give 10 number of people card, it multiplied by that cost. So that cost has to be incurred somewhere, right? So that is why these norms, these regulations are there. Moreover, RBI is coming with a lot of initiatives, right? A lot of initiatives. They have reduced the cost on UPI, rather than there is no cost on UPI. Some of the banks don't charge on NEFT, RTGS, IMPS. They, DCB Bank, we don't charge for IMPS, NEFT, these transactions, right? It all depends how do you really manage your banking operations, your banking. But ultimately, even if I do banking of 100 rupees, some part of that profit I have to give just like that to RBI, SLR, or CRR, all those things. On top of that, I have to manage, I have to give interest rates on those savings account, right? I have to, if I'm giving loan, suppose I'm giving loan for 8% and I'm giving on a saving on a 6%, that 2% is my income, where I have to manage almost all cost of management of that branch, management of that ATM, keeping that ATM safe, keeping all these digital systems safe with the fraud risk management tool, or adaptive authentication, or two-factor authentication. There is huge cost of building and maintaining and managing. That is why this small cost comes, and it has to be there. If it is not there, then there is no incentive for bankers also. And similarly, I think there are a lot of other schemes wherein customer can choose which one to use, which one not to use. But I think in India, I think we have quite we are seeing a lot of revamps are happening at a cost, right? If you go to Sweden and Switzerland, if you put money in the bank account, you have to pay some amount on top of that money. In banking in India, we pay money to the customers who are sitting giving money. But in savings account also in Switzerland, Sweden, so you have to give, customer has to give top up extra fees for maintaining. So we are here, it is a different conditions. I think we are quite liberal compared to some of those good financial countries.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So also touching upon a bit of data security in terms of how banks are operating today. And like recently, just the other day, I had a call, regarding my credit card. I picked up the call. I called the helpline. The agent was clearly at home. I could hear his kids in the background.
Oh,
Yes, he was at home and taking my call. However, he somehow knew my information, the entire information of how much I had paid in my credit card, when was the transaction happened, and all of this. So a hint to myself of, he has that information with him now. How secure is it? Are banks really, taking customer support to a level where probably the customer support supersedes the laws or security of the system? So these are things that ran through my head at least. So I thought it would be a good platform to ask you these questions as well of, how do you take data security perspective from these things, and what are your views on what's happening to the data that we have? Yeah.
yeah, I think data security is a prime concern not only in banking, it's everywhere. So we are always so happy that I am going here, I am going there, I have done this, I have done that, and we are very always happy to post everything on Facebook or any of those social media. Their data security never comes. Okay, there comes us social happiness or our self happiness. Can you? There is a science like social engineering and social engineering frauds, right? People can make out your password looking at your social trends. People can use that data and really do havoc for your life, not only banking life but non-banking life also. So that's a way to look at data security. So citizens has to be very, very important to see what they are doing on a social media or wherever they are giving it. People are so happy to give their name, date of birth, mother's maiden name, everything in Big Bazaar. Whoever comes to them, this is a credit card free of cost for you, could you give me this information? People give out their Aadhaar, everything just free of cost. I think it's a awareness for people should know what to do, what not to do, where to share their data, where not to share their data. That's a responsibility with every customer and every human being. Now coming back your experience and what is happening in the banking. So certainly there are a lot of norms around contact centers. There are a lot of norms around storing of the data for every customer. We are not owner of that data. It's a customer is the owner of every data. He has always a right to come and say ki why my data is lying there, right? That is the regulation in India says ki customer is the owner of their data. And we will see a lot of data regulation aspects will come here on, or data protection law once whenever it comes in India, just like GDPR. You will see a lot of challenges every organization will face. And bringing back what you have faced, it should not be like that. Say for example, our banking, people still go to the contact center to do the services to the customers. They are still going with a cab. They are taking their risk for their lives. They are still going to the bank branches, are sitting there for serving those customers who wants to come and deposit cash. So there are other examples also. But I think to come back to your example, it should not be like that. So ultimately, banks, healthcare companies, telecom companies who are sitting on huge data, I think this data has to be always protected. And I think so far what we were always talking about, data is a king, data is everything, and so nicely we used to use that data for that customer. Look at post data protection law, it will be very, very difficult to use that data. Customer consent is very, very important for everything. And if a customer has given a consent that I am okay with that kind of a contact center experience, or if I am okay with this kind of a utilization of data, so customer cannot do out there. But very important question and very important aspect of data. It is very, very important for a country, and a country who is going to use the data appropriately. Say example, the data around your health. COVID could have been another scenario, right? We have a lot of data on Arogya Setu now. So just imagine it would have a data of all people, health data of all people on around ecosystem, would have been a really boost our health index of a complete country. So that's another way to look at data. is not only banking data, but there is another good use of a data also. Like public health registry having a data sees that particular citizen has born till now. The complete data on blockchain with AI can give lot of learning, so that person sitting with a similar kind of symptoms in Rajasthan can immediately get a medicine, because similar symptoms were there with that another patient in Hyderabad. So that would be immediate learning to utilize that data. Or just imagine what has happened in Wuhan, or what has happened in many of those countries. If would have a single ecosystem of health data across all countries, would have not that much damage compared to what damage we have seen with the corona in many countries.
Okay. So, so quickly, probably just give you a brief about, what's the next wave of innovation. So we'll move to the question and answer after this, and we have some announcements to make. But quickly, can you touch upon, what is the next wave of innovation according to you in the banking and the fintech space? And where are we headed towards? A quick line on that.
So see, I think it's a good question, but I think if this question, if would have asked before Corona, my answer would have been very different. But and the current scenario is that every fintech has different life. Okay, some of those fintechs are very matured fintechs. Some of Paisabazaar or Bank Bazaar, or some of those fintechs are they started their just journey 1 year down the line or 2 year down the line. So I think I must say it's a survival game for many of those fintechs. More than 50% fintechs will get affected because of this pandemic situation. I think, as I earlier said, fintechs who will survive this situation, they will be market leaders. This is what we have seen in 2008. Uber, Google, and many of those startup companies has become now big tech companies, right? That's how we have to look at. Now, looking at innovations, I think if you ask me which are those top 10 innovations you will see in post-COVID, I would say a lot of adoption of contactless banking. Right? You will see a lot of adoption of contactless cards, QR codes. You will see a lot of ETC, which is having at a toll tag. You will see ETC or QR codes on local trains. Right? It's a very good way to look at. Right? You don't have to be stand in that queue, and you just go there, type it, and get inside the train. So I think the interfaces will reduce. Interfaces will become invisible, and those fintechs, those startups will bring on those invisible interfaces will have some edge. Other way to look at the startup fintechs who will utilize data very well, or who will create a framework which will fit into existing banking and start utilizing data immediately. So those fintechs will have an edge wherein they start utilizing their data. You will see computer vision will be adopted by many banks here on, just to improve the experience on branches or experience at ATMs. You will see some of the experiments with the IoT devices, or you will see drones. You will see how drones will be adopted not only in a banking but many other logistics, or what we have seen with Amazon. They have already experimented drones. They have already experimented robots who are giving the delivery of their goods. So that will be an adoption. In Indian kind of a scenario, it's very difficult. But why not in those very, very good smart cities where the infrastructure is quite good, roads are quite good? I think this kind of initiatives, innovations will bring on. Very important initiatives or innovations will be around sustainability. And it is a learning which COVID gives us the learning. Health, which is one of the parameter of those 17 sustainable development goals, 17 SDGs. Here on innovators, here on government, here on state government, societies will concentrate on how do I innovate around whatever I have? How do I innovate around pure water? We had done one hackathon, right? You must remember with the World Bank, right? You will see a lot of such innovations around how do I use renewable energy? How do I use wind energy? How do I really do the last mile farming adequate with a smart farming? You will see the banks will learn from that farming. They will not have a big branches. They will be having pop-up branches or mobile branches. So I think there will be a lot.
Are there any initiatives that you just mentioned? Are you adopting any of these, one or two of the?
So answer is yes, and we will also adapt we will see how every bank will really see whatever they have done as a part of a digital transformation, how they can do digital reformation. What does it mean? Recraft your digital transformation journey and get into some other mode. So this is what I must see every bank will look at. If they have not done something right now, this is the right time for banks to go for cloud first. This is the right time for banks to go for AI first or mobile first. But while doing this journey, it's very important. People also should improve. People also should reskill themselves. Unless people do the reskilling, I must have seen so many webinars, so many reskilling opportunity during last 50 days. Massive learning, right? The learning index of every human being who wants to really learn has gone multifold. I think that will really help a lot for upcoming whatever transformation bringing on. I think that's a mantra. Keep on learning. Reskilling is very important for saving whatever you are doing. Learning individually, learning as an organization, so that you bring back quite good transformative experience service for customers. So I think just to nutshell, answer is yes. It is only to see how do we really execute that path.
Absolutely. Great. So thank you so much, Prasanna. Now I have a quick announcement to make as well, and we'll quickly move to the Q&A after that. We have tons of questions that are piling up already, and we are short of time. So in the interest of that time, I'll ask you to answer those questions as quickly as possible, probably 30 seconds or lesser than that. I'll quickly announce right now what we have. So that also ties up to what you lastly said in terms of upskilling or things like that are being seen out there in the market. People are being also in our sector as well, in the AI and data science space. We have been looking, or at least the ones that we know, the friends and family and colleagues that we know are upskilling themselves. They're taking courses and so on and so forth. So that's something that we kept in mind of what can we do, to empower our community of people who are our users, who are our prospects, who are our community of developers. So what we are doing is we're giving out our cloud plans free for 14 days, so that they can use it, they can try it out. It's an entire platform which gives them an infrastructure and learning resources as well for all the data scientists out there who have data science projects and who have to run data science models. They don't need to do that on their computer anymore. They can come to our cloud, they can use the cloud itself to run these models, run these projects, along with learning resources which are video based, which are code based. They can run the models on the cloud and avail this entire service. So you will see on your screen the coupon code for availing the trial. It's free 14. It is the entire AI Blobcity AI cloud free for 14 days. And you can choose any of the plans. It also gives you the right environment and learning resources. As I said, we will also be you'll also be eligible to enroll in live sessions. Our next live session batch is starting on the 6th of June. So do take this opportunity to register yourself on Blobcity at blobcity.com/cloud and apply the coupon once you have got into the portal, and you will be able to take that, and hopefully that's something that we can do for our community, and you'll take benefit of it. So I think that's about it from our side. I will quickly move on to the questions now. I see tons of questions. We'll do as many as we can. So, okay, so the first question is from Manoj Shetra. I hope I'm saying the name right. In Nepal, digitalization has just started. Only 60% of the total population have access to banking, and around less than 10% is using digital channel full-fledged. Mobile banking has just started here and taking pace. How should the bank in Nepal move in this scenario to digitalization in Nepal. So I think it's more specific to the region in where there is just 10% of the population that uses digital channels full-fledged. So if you have any tips and tricks that you have observed or experienced.
Yeah, I think see if you it's a very good question, and any country if would like to go for a digital adoption or a digital payments adoption, first of all we have to have that kind of ecosystem available, that kind of infrastructure available. Say for example, mobile phones are there, but do we have that mobile app, mobile banking app, or even if you have a smartphone, do you have that last mile connectivity of internet, or you don't have? It all depends upon these things. Other thing, like, do we have that awareness of digital payments to be used as a country for every human being? So if you look at our journey as a India in year 2000, in 2012 something, which we have seen in interoperable, in 2010 we have seen interoperable ATMs, right? After that in 2012 we have seen IMPS, immediate payment ecosystem. We have seen adoption of RuPay in 2014, and after that, after 2014, it was a drastic accelerated journey for payments in India, with more than 7-8 different areas or channels: AEPS, Aadhaar enabled payment, we have UPI, we have Bharat Bill payment, we have NACH, CTS, so many other initiatives by NPCI. I think in a country like Nepal, if they have a supported IT arm, just like the NPCI, which has an agenda of only digital payments or a reformation of payments in the country, that will really big boon. Now that's the first step. You have to have some agency of a regulator who can create that kind of a rules, regulation, create those ecosystem, create those infrastructure availability. Second thing which we have seen in 2016-17, we have seen government has said do digital, either through demonetization or adoption of a Bhim UPI. I think second thing, like, government should come and say digital is an incentive for you, and this is an app you should utilize it. Third thing is like digital melas, right? Through BT has organized so many digital melas in many tier 2 cities. What does it mean? They have created some fair where they invited wallet companies, banks, and come and showcase your offerings and ask citizens to come and see and learn and teach. And so this is how we have seen. So I think if these kind of initiatives are there through government, a digital adoption, and I think government has created a huge network of some non-profit organization who their responsibility was only to digital payment adoption teaching. And this is why we have seen, and moreover, just imagine your journey from 2G to 3G to 4G and to 5G. We have seen 2G to 3G, it was so many years altogether. But 3G to 4G, it was in some few years, in 1 or 2 years, I think. And now after 5G, you will see adoption of digital everywhere. That's what I said. Tomorrow, digital payment will be done by your IoT device. Bringing that example of Nepal, I think boost from government, a company which is really supporting payment within a country, and a digital payment awareness through banks, that will really drive this kind of adoption in any country. It's a Nepal or any other country.
Manoj, I hope Prasanna has answered your question. Also, Prasanna, 30 seconds or less per question. Let's get quickly into more questions that we have. Another question from Vinod says, can you explain your view on smart banking? How will experience hubs replace contact centers? And also, do you think AI can help customers with open API standards? So I think I'll break it down into two parts. What's your view on smart banking, and can experience hubs replace contact centers?
So I think that's what the next wave, right? So we were operating. I'll give you an example. Atom Bank in UK, which they have started in 2014 end. That bank operates without any branch. That bank operates with 30-40 people all together, and it's a mobile first bank. Their aspiration, everything is on mobile. Similarly, I think every bank has to decide how they want to serve the customers, either through this experience hubs or to the contact center, or a hybrid model of experience hub and some virtual agents, along with the contact center. It all depends upon the journey of these. And I think many banks are started adopting these things. Now, smart banking is a way to really do how you do mobile banking, or how do we really help community, how do we really bring on the banking better experience on branches. It's a combination of all. So I think it's happening, and I think I must say, this question, if it had asked in 2012, then I would have happily said, yeah, this is the future, or something like that. But these things are already happening now.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question from Pushpa Swami, which who asks us, what use cases has DCP adopted or will adopt in the blockchain space?
So in a blockchain, I have said that we are working with the income tax department. Some 4 use cases are there. I'll answer this question differently in 30 seconds. If any organization want to adopt blockchain, don't start with the big use cases. Start with a small in-house use case. Start with something where your every stakeholder, starting from board members, your MD, CEO, or IT security guy, testers, developers, they should be aware of what is my blockchain. Then only they will sign off that particular project while it goes on production. So we are also part of that journey. We have started with many POCs, many works. We are doing one project on ATM surveillance or ATM security, which is based upon blockchain. Will go live in the coming 2 months. We are working on an income tax department with income tax department and Infosys. We are working on one use cases where we'll reduce down lot of operational overheads around cash-based reconciliation. A lot of cash goes in suspicious account. How do we derive that cash out of with an optimistic way? So whenever you go for blockchain journey, start with small, then go for the bigger use cases. That's the mantra for any of the organization. And very important, go for those use cases which are relevant to your organization. Don't go for something which is just to be part of that trade finance, but it is not relevant to your organization. If you ask me tomorrow, what is that you will bring on a blockchain? I will say complete SME banking or complete workflow of SME banking, I will bring on a blockchain. Or any of those audit which is happening in my organization, I need to put it under a blockchain, so that tomorrow regulator comes and asks for those evidences. I will say, this is a blockchain-based compliant audit system. The proofs or evidences which are found in 2014 are still intact. So that will be the good use case for me. Or those document keeping like agreements, ND agreements. So in a nutshell, Karishma or Pushpa, go for those use cases. Although that question is for my organization, but go for use cases which is relevant to your organization, and go for those use cases which will take all of your stakeholder in that awareness journey.
Correct. Yeah. So start small, be relevant, and take it from there.
Yes.
You'll succeed in blockchain.
Yeah, that's coming from the experience, because we started with the big, we failed, and that's why we have started with small and which is relevant.
Absolutely correct. Okay. So moving on, we have a few more questions around corporate credit departments. I'll just pick a question which is a little bit smaller. So yeah. I have a question. You have opined on digital future prospects. Those are likely to serve operational issues such as cash deposit, withdrawals, online payments, etc. My question to you is, do you think digital banking can serve for loan processing or credit card operations, credit operations? Also, what do you think about mortgage valuation, security, paper execution, and so on? How can we trust loan clients without talking to them face to face? This is a question from Bimal. I feel it's around, you've talked about a lot of, how banking transactions have been changing and so on and so forth. So his question is around, do you think digital banking can serve for loan processing or credit operations?
Yeah, so now it all depends upon where you are doing lending. Are you doing in India, or are you doing in US, or are you doing in Canada, are you doing in Sweden? So everywhere there is a different type of customers. Everywhere trust level is up and down. So that one aspect you ask whether to trust their customer or not, right? But looking at in India, banks or those non-banking fintech companies, they are also offering, or those peer-to-peer companies who has converted into NBFCs. All of these guys are going for digital lending or the whole process optimization on digital ecosystems. And certainly this will help to reduce lot of those operations where your file moves from one location to another location or one man to another man. This process will be optimized. But remember that we are governed by regulators. We are not governed by somebody sitting in a bank or somebody sitting in a fintech, right? Or a CEO of that fintech. When we go for a lending process, when we go for a savings account or any of the account process or keeping that money safe, we go with all the optimization, digitalization, everything happens around regulation. Even if we optimize zero touch banking or zero seeing lending, it will be against a regulation. If a regulation allows us to do that, we will do that. If regulations say it is not, it is against regulation, we will not do that. So that's a clear answer. So we will trust, and it all depends upon what type of loan. Is it a 2 rupees loan or a 2 crore loan? Based upon that, we will take that call. If it is a big amount, certainly we have to go there. We have to visit there. The whole process again, it will be digitized, but some other way. It all depends upon what path we follow for a complete digitization. But certainly banks are taking help of fintechs. Banks are leveraging on their ecosystems, and NBFC is also part of these games. And digitization is happening everywhere. You talk every innovation head or a digital head in any of the bank, and you talk about what is that you are digitizing. I think lending will be one of those answers. The rise of payment fintechs in the year 2014, 15, 16, and the rise of lending fintechs. You will see rise of lending fintech in 2016 and 17, 18 was huge, and still it's huge compared to payment fintechs or compared to other regtech or insurance fintechs.
Okay, so I think we have overshot our time. So in the interest of time, we will collect all the questions and we will share it with you as well. Then we'll see how to take this forward, the questions forward from there. So we've reached the end of the session today. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for being here with us today and sharing your experience and knowledge. It's always insightful and amazing speaking to you about innovation, technology, blockchain in the banking and finance sector. So thank you very much.
So last but not the least, I just want to talk to audiences, to you. I think we are being associated since last couple of years or more than that. So thank you so much, Karishma and Sanket, for bringing me on this forum. And I appreciate, Karishma, the kind of straightforward questions, or I think I must have tried giving straightforward and transparent answers to that, so that more and more community members get benefited out of it. So last message for everybody. So this digitalization will keep on happening. Today we might be in era of digital 2.0, or maybe tomorrow digital 3.0 or digital 4.0. This is a journey for all of us. But the kind of scenario which we are living today, COVID and pandemic, it's a very different scenario. 2020 will be remembered for years together, right? Years together, how really human breed has survived this particular phase. And you will see, every country will see lot of innovations will happen, not only in banking, but in many other areas. And most of these innovations will be around how human life will go from one level to another. That's what these days I call, it's not a digital transformation, it's completely human transformation. Here on it will happen, and it will be well supported by banks, fintechs, healthcare, and so on. So last message from my side: be safe, stay home, stay safe. We can do so many things in 2021, but take care of your health today. Be safe, be around your health, take care of health, stay strong. And maybe after this post-COVID, we'll see a lot of collaboration, lot of innovations, everything will happen. But time today is to keeping yourself, keep a social distancing, be safe. Ultimately, at least in Bombay kind of a city, this is all must nowadays. So thank you so much, Karishma, Sanket, for bringing me on this today's version of your. I really loved it. I really liked the way you really got those very good questions. Personally, I just gone through those questions. I didn't prepare for any question. I thought, let me be there, let me be the way I am. And thank you so much again. Thank you, audience, for listening me. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, where I'm most active on social media. I keep on posting a lot of technical relevant trending documents, articles. So be in touch. Be safe. Thank you so much, Karishma and Sanket. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Prasanna. Be safe as well. We will see you soon. Hopefully, we'll do much more things together. All right. Yeah. So for everyone joining us today on this fireside chat with Prasanna Lohar, thank you so much. Thank you for participating. We will see you soon next time. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.